Indira Kemp adjusted the thin straps of her top and looked at herself in the dressing room mirror. 20 years old, slim figure, long dark hair. Nature had been generous to her, and she knew how to use it. Unlike many girls who came to the club out of desperation or stupidity, Indira had chosen this job deliberately. Dancing brought her pleasure, and the money allowed her to rent a decent apartment and save for the future. "Ready to go?" Kira asked, fixing her makeup at a nearby mirror. The tall, dark-haired girl had been working at Malachite for 3 years and was considered one of the best dancers. "Almost. How's the mood of the crowd?" "Typical Thursday. A few regulars, a couple of newcomers. Everyone's on their best behavior." Indira nodded. The Malachite did have an eye for order. Leonard Craig, the club's owner, didn't tolerate rudeness toward the girls and could kick out anyone who crossed the line. That was one of the main benefits of working here: safety and respect, plus honest pay with no cheating or deductions. The music from the hall was getting louder. The previous number was coming to an end. Indira stood up, checked her hair, and headed for the dressing room exit. As she passed Craig's office, she saw him talking on the phone, holding some paperwork in his hand. "No, Michael, all the taxes are paid on time," he said into the phone. "Licenses are renewed, health codes are up to date, we're clean." Craig noticed Indira and nodded to her. The 45-year-old black man with graying temples looked more like a successful businessman than the stereotypical strip club owner. He wore expensive suits, spoke quietly and politely, but everyone in the club knew not to mess with him. Craig protected his business and his people any way he could. The Malachite room was decorated in dark green colors with gold accents. Not flashy, tasteful. There were about 20 men of various ages sitting at the tables, from young office workers to respectable gentlemen in their 50s. The staff served customers quickly and unobtrusively, with bartender Terrence pouring drinks behind a mahogany counter. Indira took the stage as the DJ announced her exit. The lights dimmed, and her favorite song came on, slow, sensual, allowing her to show off her plasticity, not just get naked. She began to move to the music, feeling the tension of the day leave her body. Dance always calmed her and gave her confidence. The customers watched with interest, but without vulgarity. Malachite had a special contingent. People came here to relax after work, to unwind, not to seek cheap entertainment. Craig carefully selected both staff and visitors. When the room was over, Indira collected bills from the edge of the stage. A generous tip, as usual. One of the regulars, an elderly attorney named Jamal Preston, nodded her approval and raised his glass in greeting. Indira smiled back. Preston had always been a gentleman and never allowed himself too much. As she walked down from the stage, she noticed several people looking at the television above the bar. The DJ announced a break. The next number would start in 20 minutes when Kira finished changing. "Terrence, can I get a beer?" Indira asked, approaching the bar. "Sure, beautiful." The bartender smiled, pulling out a cold bottle. "Good job today." Terrence was one of the few people who knew that Indira could only afford to drink after performances, never during work. "Thank you. What's on?" She nodded at the TV. "News. Something about a judge." The bartender turned up the volume. The screen showed a report from City Hall. The reporter stood on the courthouse steps, with the columns and flags visible behind her. Federal Judge Cassius Nairobi made a strong statement today about the need to crack down on establishments that he said were corrupting young people and undermining the morals of society, the reporter said. The camera switched to the judge himself. Indira froze with a bottle of beer in her hand. Cassius stood behind the podium in his expensive suit, his voice sounding confident and convincing. "We can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening in our city," he declared. "Strip clubs, massage parlors, gambling parlors, they are corrupting our youth and turning Millsboro into a city of vice. As an officer of the law, it is my duty to put a stop to it." Indira felt the blood drain from her face. What a bitch. Yesterday, this same man was in bed with her, and today he was publicly declaring war on her work. Shit. Terrence said quietly, wiping his glass. Here we go again. Kira approached the bar, ready for her speech. What's wrong? She asked. A federal judge declared war on our business, Terrence replied. Indira was silent, not taking her eyes off the screen. Cassius continued his speech about morality and justice, and every word he said hit her like a slap in the face. Craig walked out of the office and approached them. His face was stony, but Indira could see the muscles in his jaw tense. Turn that off, he said to the bartender. Chief, maybe we should listen to the rest of it. I said, turn it off. The TV went out. There was silence in the room. Even the customers stopped talking, sensing the change of atmosphere. Girls, let's keep working, Craig said softly. Our paperwork is in order. Everything is honest. Nothing to worry about. But the tone of his voice said otherwise. Indira still stood stunned, trying to process what she'd seen. What if he really does start a campaign against us? Kira asked quietly. We'll see, Craig replied. For now, it's business as usual. Preston approached them with an empty glass. Could I have another whiskey? He asked Terrence, then looked at the girls. Did you hear about Judge Nairobi? Just saw it on TV, Indira said quietly. Her voice sounded strange even to herself. Do you know him? Preston asked. We've crossed paths a couple times on the job, Craig said quickly. He's a serious man, not the kind to throw words around. Indira looked at him in surprise. Craig knows Cassius? How? Well, what can he do? Kira asked. It's all legal. Legality is a stretch, Preston sighed. Especially when it comes to political ambitions. The DJ announced the next number. Kira finished her juice and went to the stage. Indira stayed at the bar, sipping her beer and trying to get her thoughts in order. Cassius, the federal judge, her lover for months now, and now her number one enemy. Indy, are you okay? Terrence asked quietly. You look a little pale. I'm okay, just tired. But it wasn't true. Her insides were seething with rage and resentment. How dare he? How could he do that? The evening dragged on for an agonizingly long time. Indira tried to keep to herself as usual, but her thoughts kept returning to Cassius and his statement. She knew she had to talk to him, to find out what was going on. But at the same time, she wanted to just disappear, forget about their relationship forever. As the club was closing, Craig approached her. If anyone asks questions about the club journalists, cops, anyone, please direct them to me, he said. No comments from the girls. Of course, Indira nodded. And another thing, Craig lowered his voice. If you have any connections with powerful people in town, now would be a good time to use them. He looked at her intently, and Indira realized he suspected something. I don't know what you mean, she lied. Craig nodded, but the look in his eyes told her he didn't believe her. The drive home seemed endless. Indira kept thinking about what she would say to Cassius when they met. And they would have to. There were too many questions. The phone rang as she was walking up the stairs to her apartment. Cassius. Hello? She answered coldly. Indy, we need to talk, said a familiar voice. Yeah, I think so too. Tomorrow at the usual place, 7 o'clock at night. I'll be there. She disconnected without saying goodbye. Indira arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel at 7 o'clock sharp. It was the place they'd chosen to meet 3 months ago, when their relationship had just begun. An expensive downtown hotel where Cassius had rented a room under an assumed name. No one asked questions here, and the staff was accustomed to ignoring guests. She went up to the 8th floor and knocked on the door of room 812. Cassius opened it at once, as if he'd been waiting outside the door. Tall, distinguished, in an expensive suit, the same man who had declared war on her world on television yesterday. Come in, he said, stepping aside. Indira entered a spacious room with panoramic windows. Normally, she was excited about these meetings, but today was different. Today, she looked at Cassius as a stranger. Something to drink? He offered, nodding at the minibar. No thanks. I need an explanation, not cocktails. Cassius made his way to the window and stood with his back to her. His shoulders were tense, his hands clenched into fists. Indira knew the signs. He was nervous, though he tried not to show it. "You saw the news," he said without turning around. "I did. So did everyone at the club. Can you imagine what it's like to watch the man you're sleeping with publicly destroy your work?" "Indy, it's complicated." "What's complicated?" She came closer, her voice harder. "Explaining to your mistress why you chose to ruin her life?" Cassius finally turned to her. There was a mixture of fatigue and determination on his face. In the 3 months of their relationship, Indira had learned to read his moods, but today he seemed a stranger. "You don't understand. I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice. You're not a robot, Cass. You made the decision to declare war on strip clubs. Why?" He walked to the chair and lowered himself into it. Indira remained standing, looking down at him. For some reason, it gave her confidence. "I'm being nominated for the Supreme Court," Cassius said quietly. "But there are conditions. You have to prove yourself to be a champion of morality, a man of impeccable reputation. And you've decided the best way to do that is to trample my workplace? Indy, you have to understand, this isn't personal, it's political. It's not personal to you, it's very personal to me." Indira sat on the edge of the couch across from him. "We're an honest club. We pay taxes, licenses are in order, no one forces the girls. What can you charge? It's not about violations." Cassius rubbed his face with his hands. "It's about image. I need to show the voters and the Senate that I stand up for traditional values. At our expense. At the expense of the industry as a whole. It's not just your club that's getting hit." Indira looked at him with growing amazement. Did he really think that would comfort her? "Do you realize what you're saying? You want to destroy dozens of jobs, deprive people of their earnings for the sake of your political ambitions?" "I don't. But that's the way the system works, Indy. You have to sacrifice something to get something." "And what are you sacrificing?" Indira's voice has turned venomous. "Your career will benefit from this. We are sacrificing." Cassius stood up and walked to the window. The lights of the evening city burned behind the glass. Millsboro lived its ordinary life, unaware of the drama that was unfolding in the expensive hotel room. "It's only temporary," he said, looking down the street. "When I get a seat on the Supreme Court, things will calm down. We can find other ways." "Other ways to what? Get people back to work? Repeal laws you're going to push through?" "Indy, be realistic. We both know our relationship couldn't last forever. I have a wife, a family, a career, and you—" "I have what?" Indira stood up, feeling rage rising in her chest. "Finish the thought, Cass. I have what?" "You have a different life, different priorities." "My priorities are my job, which you want to destroy, my co-workers that you want to throw out on the street, and our relationship, which, it turns out, meant nothing to you." Cassius turned sharply toward her. "Don't say that. You know that's not true." "Do I?" Indira stepped close to him. "Then explain to me how a man who claims to have feelings for me can quietly ruin my life. Because I can't let my emotions influence important decisions." Cassius raised his voice, but immediately pulled himself together. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yell. No, yell, at least show some honest emotion." They stood across from each other, and Indira could see the mixture of guilt and stubbornness in his eyes. He knew what he was doing was wrong, but he wasn't going to back down. "Cass," she said softer, "you have the power to stop this. Malachite is a decent place. Craig runs an honest business. Find another target for your crusade. I can't. The decision's already been made. Tomorrow I'm filing a formal complaint with the DA's office demanding an audit of all entertainment venues in the city. So our relationship really doesn't mean anything to you." "It does. But not enough to risk my career over it." The words sounded like a slap in the face. Indira took a step back, feeling something inside her break down. "I see," she said coldly. "Then I have a suggestion." "What is it?" "Leave the club alone. and cancel this stupid campaign altogether. Indy, I told you, or I'll tell everyone about our relationship. Your wife, the press, the Senate Ethics Committee. Let's see what it does to your sterling reputation. Cassius's face is stone cold. You wouldn't dare. Try to convince me. Indira smiled, but it was not a kind smile. I have pictures, messages, recordings of our conversations, more than enough to prove the connection. This is blackmail. This is justice. You're using your position to hurt me and my friends. Why can't I use our relationship to stop you? Cassius was silent, mulling over her words. Indira could see the feverish calculation going on in his head. What he would lose more, his career because of the scandal, or the possibility of getting on the Supreme Court because he refused to campaign. You don't realize what you're getting into, he said finally. The people behind my nomination don't forgive betrayal, and the people behind me don't forgive attacks on their business. What does that mean? It means Craig has connections in this town too, and he really doesn't like it when someone threatens his girls. Cassius went pale. Apparently, he knew more about the reputation of the owner of Malachite than he was letting on. Indy, don't make threats. Let's find a compromise. What kind of compromise? You want to destroy my job and I'm supposed to be sympathetic to your ambitions? I can help you find another job. Give you money to move to another city. Are you kidding me? Indira couldn't believe her ears. You're offering me a bribe to keep quiet? I'm offering a reasonable solution to a problem. I'm not the problem, Cass. The problem is you. Your greed and your cynicism. She picked up her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? Cassius asked. Home, to think about what to do next. Indy, wait. We can talk about this. There's nothing to discuss. You have a choice. Cancel your campaign or get scandalized. There's no other option. And if I say no? Indira stopped at the door and looked at him over her shoulder. Then tomorrow night, your wife will know where you spend your free time. And the day after that, the whole town will know about it. It won't just ruin my career. It'll ruin my family. I should have thought of that sooner. She left the room without looking back. Her hands were shaking in the elevator, with rage, with resentment, with the realization that the man she trusted was capable of such betrayal. Outside, Indira took a deep breath of the cool evening air. The city lived its usual life. People were hurrying home from work. Lights were on in restaurants. Music was playing somewhere. But for her, everything had changed. Now she knew what Cassius Nairobi was capable of, and she knew she had to stop him. Her phone vibrated. A message had come in. Indira looked at the screen and saw Cassius's number. Indy, please don't do anything rash. We can find a way out. She deleted the message without replying. The time for negotiation had passed. Cassius Nairobi couldn't sleep all night. He was tossing and turning in bed next to his wife who was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm that was playing out in her husband's mind. Indira's words sounded like a verdict in his ears. Tomorrow night, your wife will know where you spend your free time. He got up at 5 in the morning, drank coffee in the kitchen of his house in an upscale neighborhood, and tried to focus on work. But his thoughts kept returning to the conversation at the hotel. Indira had been serious. He knew her well enough to realize she didn't make empty threats. At 8 in the morning, the phone rang. Senator Douglas Morgan, one of the people promoting Cassius's nomination to the Supreme Court. Nairobi, how are things going with the campaign against lewd establishments? Morgan asked without preamble. It's going according to plan. I'll file a formal complaint with the prosecutor's office today. That's great. The voters will appreciate it, and so will the Ethics Committee. After that conversation, Cassius realized there was no backing down. There's too much at stake. Too many powerful people expecting him to deliver, but Indira wouldn't back down either. He knew her character, stubborn, principled, ready to go all the way. At 10 in the morning, he sent her a message. We need to talk again. Meet me at the Maple Street apartment at 7 p.m. The Maple Street apartment was their backup meeting place. a small one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood that Cassius rented through a front man. This was where they came when the hotel seemed too public a place. The answer came an hour later. "I'll be there." The day stretched agonizingly slow. Cassius tried to work, but was constantly distracted by thoughts of the upcoming conversation. He had to find a way to convince Indira, offer more money, promise help, anything to keep her from ruining his plans. At 6:30, he arrived at the apartment and waited. A small room with a minimum of furniture, a sofa, a table, an armchair. This was where they spent their time when they just wanted to talk, not just have sex. Cassius poured himself a whiskey from the bottle he kept in the closet and tried to calm down. Indira arrived at 7 sharp. She looked calm, but Cassius could see the tension in her posture, the compressed lips, the cold stare. She was ready for a fight. "I hope you've changed your mind about our club," she said, taking off her jacket. "Sit down. We need to find a compromise. I've already told you my terms. If you don't touch malachite, I won't talk about our relationship. You touch it, tomorrow the whole town will know the truth." Cassius finished his whiskey and put the glass on the table. The alcohol didn't help. His nerves were stretched to the limit. "Indy, understand. I can't make an exception for one establishment. The campaign has to be comprehensive or it won't work. I don't care about other places. I only care about our club. Craig's is honest. The girls work of their own free will. Find yourself another target. But the Malachite is the most famous place in town. If I don't touch it, everyone will think the campaign isn't real." Indira sat down on the couch and looked at him carefully. "Cass, I don't care about your campaign. You want to close other clubs, that's your business. But don't touch malachite. I can't do that." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." Cassius stood up and paced the room. Indira sat still, but he could feel the threat coming from her. She wasn't kidding, and she did have proof of their connection. "All right," he said. $50,000. Cash. You disappear out of town and I forget about malachite." Indira grinned. "You're offering me a bribe? For me to give up a job I like and friends I trust? I'm offering a reasonable solution to a problem." "I'm not the problem, Cass. The problem is that you're a greedy bastard who cares more about your career than anything else." Cassius felt rage rising in his chest. No one dared talk to him like that. He was a federal judge, a respected man, and this girl dares to call him a bastard. "Watch your mouth," he said coldly. "Or what? You'll sue?" Indira laughed. "Against your own mistress?" "Indy, don't test my patience. You don't test mine. I told you my terms. Either you leave our club alone, or everyone finds out about us." Cassius stopped in front of the window. It was getting dark outside. The streetlights were being turned on. Ordinary people were coming home from work, unaware of the passions simmering in the small apartment on the second floor. "You know what the most disgusting thing about this situation is?" Indira continued. "You know very well that our club is honest. You know Craig. You know how he treats the girls, and yet he's willing to destroy us. It's just business. Business to you. For me, it's a life." Cassius turned to her. There was so much contempt in Indira's eyes that he felt dirty. But at the same time, the anger was growing. Who was she to dictate terms to him? Some stripper daring to threaten a federal judge? 100,000, he said. "That's my final offer. And my final answer is go to hell." "Then it's your own fault what happens next." Indira got up from the couch. "What does that mean?" Cassius stepped close to her. Very close. Indira didn't pull away, but he could see her muscles tense. "It means that if you try to blackmail me, I will destroy you. I have connections, influence, money, and you have what? I have the truth, and people who will back me up." "What people? Your drug dealer Craig? He'd be the first to turn you in if he felt threatened." "You don't know him." "I know his kind. They're all the same, cowards and traitors." Indira made a sharp turn toward the door. "That's it. This conversation is over. Tomorrow morning, the whole town will know about us. Cassius grabbed her arm. Stop. We're not done yet. Let me go. No, you'll listen to me. Indira tried to break free, but Cassius held tight. Something switched in his mind. Years of restraint, political correctness, diplomacy were gone. All that was left was anger. You think you can threaten me? He hissed. You think I'm going to let some whore ruin my career? Let go! Indira hit him with her free hand, but Cassius intercepted it as well. You brought this on yourself. You brought this on yourself. Psycho! Indira screamed. Let me go this instant! But Cassius didn't hear her screams. Blood was rushing in his ears, and his eyes were blurred with red spots. His hands reached for her neck, the thin neck he'd kissed so often. Now his fingers clenched around it for an entirely different purpose. Indira twitched, tried to break free, but Cassius was stronger, much stronger. Her eyes widened with terror, and she wheezed, trying to breathe. But he wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. When it was over, Cassius stood over the still body, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking, his head was empty. What had he done? Indira lay on the floor, eyes open, but no longer seeing anything. Cassius knelt down beside her, checked her pulse. Nothing. Panic came over him in a wave. What to do now? How to explain? His career wasn't just in jeopardy, it was over. If anyone found out... He forced himself to calm down and think. He rented the apartment through a front man. The neighbors don't know him. There's no security cameras nearby. If we do this right, no one will connect him to Indira's death. Suicide. Yeah, it's the only option. Young woman, personal problems, depression. Very plausible. Cassius took a look around the apartment. We need to erase all traces of his presence. Whiskey glass washed, wiped down every surface he touched. Indira can't have his DNA on her. He spent 2 hours cleaning. Every inch of the apartment was checked and cleaned. Then he carried Indira's body into the bathroom and hung it on a towel hook using her own scarf. When everything was ready, Cassius took another look around the place. It looked plausible. A young woman had hanged herself in a rented apartment. No signs of violence, no evidence. He'd gone out the back door without seeing anyone. Left his car 3 blocks away, another precaution. At home, his wife asked why he was out so late. Cassius replied that he was late for work, the usual lies he'd been telling for years. But now everything had changed. Now he was a killer. Detective Zamira Black arrived on the scene at 9:30 in the morning. The apartment on Maple Street looked ordinary, an old 2-story building in a quiet neighborhood where people preferred not to meddle in other people's business. That's why the body wasn't discovered until 24 hours later, when a downstairs neighbor complained of a strange smell. Zamira went up to the 2nd floor, where the door of apartment number 12 was crowded with colleagues from the criminalistics department. A 42-year-old woman with short graying hair and tired eyes. She'd seen enough suicides in her career to know right away that something was wrong. "What do we got?" she asked Sergeant Reeves, the young man who'd been the first to arrive on the call. Indira Kemp, 20 years old, hung herself in the bathroom with her own scarf. Neighbor found it last night when she went to complain about the smell. Who is she? She's a dancer at the Malachite strip club. ID'd her on Oak Avenue, but the body was found here. Who rents this apartment? Well, that's interesting. The lease is for a Marcus Jones, but we checked, but there's no such person. Fake ID Zamira went into the apartment. Small, almost empty, minimal furniture. A sofa, a table, an armchair. That's it. No personal belongings, photos, books. The fridge was empty, the cupboard's empty too. Doesn't look like a place where someone lives permanently. Strange place to commit suicide, she muttered. Hanging in the bathroom was the body of a young black girl. Beautiful, well-groomed, expensive clothes. Didn't look like someone who had reached the point of despair. Did you find a suicide note? Zamira asked. No, we searched the whole apartment. Nothing. Any sign of a struggle? No, it's neat, no injuries. Zamira examined the victim's neck. Strange marks. Sure, the noose could have left them, but something was bothering her. Too evenly spaced, not your typical suicide marks. When's the pathologist getting here? On his way. Dr. Hendricks said he'd be here in an hour. Zamira's back in the main room. What was the girl doing in this empty apartment? Why did she come here? And more importantly, why kill herself here when she had her own place to live? Detective Black? A tall black man in an expensive suit entered the apartment. Leonard Craig, I own the Malachite Club. I heard about what happened to Indira. How'd you hear about it? I have contacts in the police department. When something happens to my people, I'm the first to know. Zamira studied Craig closely. 45 years old, quiet confidence in his voice, expensive clothes, but no frills. A man accustomed to power but able to control himself. Cold rage in his eyes, carefully hidden behind a mask of politeness. What can you tell us about the victim? Indira worked for me for 8 months. A good girl. Craig's voice hardened. No one had the right to touch her. Did she have any enemies? Any problems in her personal life? Indira was smart. Didn't mess with trash, stayed out of trouble. Worked her usual shift yesterday. Did she ever mention this apartment? Never. Indira had her own place on Oak Avenue. And this place. He looked around the empty rooms. A safe house for secret meetings. Mr. Craig, would you mind if I came to your club? Talk to the victim's co-workers. You're welcome to come. But I'll tell you straight away, whoever killed Indira will answer for it. Are you sure it's murder? Aren't you? After Craig left, Zamira continued her inspection. The apartment was too clean, too impersonal. Someone had cleaned it very thoroughly. There wasn't even much dust, clearly a recent damp cloth. Dr. Hendricks arrived exactly 1 hour later. An older man with gray hair and attentive eyes. He'd been a pathologist for 30 years and was rarely wrong in his preliminary findings. What do you think, Doc? Zamira asked when he had finished his initial examination. At first glance, suicide by hanging, but there are nuances. Like what? The marks on the neck don't match the scarf loop. There's evidence of manual strangulation. See these bruises on the throat? And the body was obviously moved post-mortem. Murder? Pretty sure. Strangled by hand, then hung for disguise. Zamira nodded. Her intuition never failed her. Meanwhile, Craig reached the club and went straight to the dressing room. The girls already knew about Indira's death. News traveled fast in their circle. Is it true, Chief? Kira asked quietly. Her eyes were red. It's true. Who could? Terrence wiped his hands with a towel, his face grim. Indy didn't hurt anyone. I don't know yet, but I'll find out. Kira sobbed and turned back to the mirror. The other 2 girls were silent, heads down. Losing a colleague was always a blow, especially when it was someone like Indira. Think back to last night, Craig said. Every little detail. Who she talked to, who she called, how she acted. She was upset after the news, Kira said, without turning from the mirror. When they showed the judge on TV. Nairobi? Yeah. First it was like she saw a ghost, then she swore. She said, "What a bitch," and she was gloomy all night. Craig frowned. That's a pretty emotional reaction for a stranger. Anything else? She didn't finish her beer, Terrence added. She always had a drink after the show, and she left earlier than usual. Home? I don't know. Said she had a meeting. Craig made a mental note of that detail. A meeting. Same day the judge declared war on strip clubs. Detective Black arrived in the afternoon. She methodically interviewed the entire staff, taking notes on every detail. The result was the same. Indira was working fine, but upset about the news about the judge. Did she know him? The detective asked Craig when they were alone. Looks like she did. The reaction was too personal. Do you ever have powerful clients? Craig was quiet. I do. Politicians, businessmen, but I don't name names. It's house policy. I see. Detective, I'll be blunt. Whoever killed Indira is running out of time. I'll find him first. Is that a threat? It's a promise." Black looked at him carefully, but said nothing. After the police left, Craig locked himself in his office and pulled out his cell phone. "Vince, I need some information. Judge Nairobi. Anything you can find." "What do you want him for?" "Indira overreacted to him. I want to know why." "Got it. I'll give you an answer tomorrow." Vincent was a former private investigator with some useful connections. If the information existed, he would find it. The next morning, Vincent brought the file. Cassius Nairobi, 50 years old, federal judge. Married, 2 kids, impeccable reputation. But there's one interesting detail. Go ahead. He rents an apartment on Maple Street, under a fake ID in the name of Marcus Jones. Craig froze. Same name, same street. Number? 12. That's where your girl was found. The puzzle was coming together. Craig felt the rage he'd been holding back for 2 days begin to spiral out of control. So they'd been seeing each other. He'd been her lover and then her killer. Sounds like it? You want me to dig deeper? Dig. I need proof. Iron. What about the police? The police are slow, and I don't have time. Craig stood up and went to the window. Down below flowed the ordinary life of the city, people hurrying about their business. Somewhere among them was a killer who thought he could get away with anything. Vince, remember what I told the girls the first day on the job? That you were protecting them. That's right. And that bastard judge is about to see what that means. 3 days later, Vincent returned to the club with the information Craig had been looking forward to. The ex-detective looked tired. It was obvious he'd been hard at work on the search. He sat down across from Craig in his office and laid a folder of documents on the desk. "Your judge was an interesting person," Vincent began, lighting a cigarette. "At first glance, a model family man and a principled fighter for justice. But dig deeper." Craig waited silently, looking at the photographs Vincent had pulled out of the folder. CCTV footage, bank records, phone records, a whole dossier. Cassius Nairobi met with Indira regularly. These are pictures outside the Grand Plaza Hotel. They've been going there together for the last 2 months. And these are receipts for a room in someone else's name. Classic married man scheme. "I've already figured that out," Craig replied dryly. "I'm curious about something else. What happened the night of the murder?" That's where it gets interesting. Vincent pulled out a few more sheets. A neighbor on the first floor saw him leave his house on Maple Street around 9 o'clock at night. Frustrated, nervous, looking around all the time. Craig studied the timeline. Indira had been found the next day in the morning, but judging by the condition of the body, death had occurred in the evening. It all fit. "One more detail," Vincent continued. "The hotel manager remembers their last meeting the day before the murder. He said Indira left the room visibly upset, and the judge yelled something about irrationality and consequences." "So they had a fight," Craig muttered. "More than a fight. It sounded like the girl had threatened him with something serious, so serious that he'd rather kill her." Craig stood up and walked to the window. Millsboro looked peaceful in the evening. People were coming home from work. The lights were on in the restaurants. Ordinary life in an ordinary town where a federal judge kills a young woman and thinks he'll get away with it. "Vince, I need a meeting with him, one-on-one." "It's risky, Chief. Nairobi's not just some crook off the street. He's got connections, influence, security. But I have something he doesn't. The truth about what he did to my girl." Vincent put out his cigarette and looked at Craig carefully. Over the years of working together, he'd learned to read his boss's moods. Craig was calm now, but that calm was deceptive, like the calm before the storm. "How do you plan to approach him?" "The judge has a habit. He plays tennis every Friday at the Oaks Hill private club. Alone, no security. Thinks it's safe." "How do you know that?" "I looked into his routine before I found out about Indira. Just in case." Vincent nodded. Craig had always been shrewd, studying all the influential people in town, especially those who could affect his business. Friday night, Craig arrived at the Oaks Hill Tennis Club, a prestigious establishment for the rich and powerful of Millsboro, where you had to pay more for admission than others made in a month. But Craig had connections everywhere, and the doorman let him in without question. Nairobi was playing on court 3 with a partner in his 60s, apparently a colleague in the court system. Craig watched the game from the cafeteria, sipping whiskey and waiting for the right moment. At 9:30, the game ended. The referee's partner left first, and Nairobi headed for the locker room. Craig waited a few minutes and followed him. There was no one in the locker room but the two of them. Nairobi was standing at his locker, taking off his gym uniform. When he heard footsteps, he turned around and froze when he saw Craig. "What are you doing here?" the judge asked, instinctively backing up against the wall. "I want to talk, Your Honor, about a case you're interested in." "I don't know what you're talking about." "The Indira Kemp case." Nairobi turned pale. Craig saw his hands tremble, his pupils dilate. Fear. A man's afraid means he's got something to hide. It was suicide. The police closed the case. The police are wrong. I know the truth. Craig slowly moved closer. Nairobi pressed his back against the locker like a hunted animal. "What truth? That you killed my little girl, strangled her with your own hands, and then staged a suicide. You're out of your mind. I'm a federal judge. You're a murderer," Craig interrupted me. "And I can prove it." He pulled out his cell phone and turned on the tape. The screen showed a surveillance camera image of Nairobi leaving the house on Maple Street the night of the murder. "That doesn't prove anything," the judge mumbled, but his voice trembled. "How about this?" Craig showed him the bank documents. Payment for an apartment in a false name. The same apartment where Indira was killed. I can explain." "Then explain it. Be honest. Why did you kill her?" Nairobi was silent, breathing heavily. Craig could see fear and despair struggling in him. The man knew he was cornered. "She wanted to destroy me," the judge finally said. "Threatened to tell everyone about our relationship. My career, my family. It would have been ruined." "And that's why you killed her?" "I didn't mean to," Nairobi almost screamed. "We were just talking, and then she started yelling, threatening. I wasn't in control." Craig felt his insides clench with rage, but he forced himself to remain calm. The whole truth had to be found out. What was she threatening to tell? About our meetings. Said if I didn't call off the campaign against strip clubs, she'd tell my wife and the press. So she was protecting our club. "Your club?" Nairobi looked at him in surprise. "She said she wouldn't let me close Malachite. That you were a good man, that the girls trusted you." Craig felt his throat constrict with emotion. Indira had died protecting him and the club. Sacrificed her life for the people who trusted her. "She died because of us," he said quietly. "She died because of her stupidity," Nairobi burst out. "She thought she could blackmail a federal judge, some stripper against the justice system." Those words were the last straw. Craig grabbed the judge by the collar and pinned him against the locker. "That stripper was worth 10 of you. Let go of me. I'll call security. Go get him. You gonna tell them how you killed a defenseless girl?" Nairobi realized he was walking into a trap. Craig let him go and took a step back. "What do you want?" "Justice. You'll answer for what you did to Indira. No one will believe your accusations. I have an impeccable reputation." "They won't," Craig chuckled. "What if I told the press about the Maple Street apartment, the bank transfers, about the witness who saw you that night?" The judge's face turned gray. "What are you suggesting?" "Confess, by yourselves, before I turn over all the files to Detective Black." "And what's in it for me?" "Life. Prison, but life." Nairobi sank down on the bench, wrapping his arms around his head. Craig saw all his arrogance crumble, all the aplomb of a successful and powerful man. "I have a family," the judge mumbled. "Children. Indira had a life too, and friends who loved her. Give me time to think. Time's up. Decide now." Nairobi raised his head and looked at Craig. In his eyes was the hopelessness of a man who realizes the game is over. "All right, I'll confess, but on one condition." "What's that?" "My family must not be harmed. My wife, my kids. They're innocent." Craig nodded. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't interested in innocent people. The next day, Nairobi himself came to the police station and turned himself in to Detective Black, confessed to the murder of Indira Kemp, gave all the details. The detective did not even have to press. The judge spoke as if in confession, as if a stone had fallen from his soul. That evening, Craig gathered the entire club staff in the main room. Girls, bartenders, security guards, cleaners, everyone who worked at the Malachite. He stood in front of them, holding a glass of whiskey, and saw the questions in their eyes. "Indira's killer was arrested today," he said. "Federal Judge Cassius Nairobi confessed to her murder." There was silence in the room. Someone gasped, someone sobbed. "But I want you to know the truth about why she died." Craig paused, gathering his thoughts. "Indira died protecting us, protecting our club and everyone who works here." He'd told them everything. About Indira's relationship with the judge, about his plans to shut down the strip clubs, about how she'd tried to stop him. She knew she was taking a risk. But she couldn't let us lose our jobs, let our home disappear. Indira sacrificed her life for all of us. Kira cried, unable to hide her tears. Terrence stood, clenching his fists. The rest of us were silent, digesting what we had heard. "Indira wasn't just our co-worker," Craig continued. "She was family, and you don't leave family behind. Never." He raised his glass. "To Indira, to the girl who showed us what true loyalty is." Everyone raised their glasses, some with wine, some with beer, some with juice. In the silence that followed, only sobs were heard. "To Indira," they said in unison. They drank in memory of the girl who had died protecting them all.